Midnight Moon. Written by Suzana Thompson. Narrated by Sarah Sampino. Chapter 6. Damien's reaction to Bryce was anticlimactic for me. As much as I scoffed at Taylor's werewolf theories, some part of me must have believed them. She still didn't know that I suspected Bryce of being the one who attacked Blair and Damien. I had been waiting for Damien to sense that Bryce was the wolf who bit him, but he seemed unaffected by Bryce's presence. Maybe he couldn't recognize him in his human form, I thought, before realizing that I was becoming worse than Taylor. Bryce and I happened to meet up in the hallway on our way to class. He slowed his long stride to keep pace with me.
"It's Clarissa, right?"
"Yeah," I confirmed. "Hi, Bryce. Are you finding your way around okay?"
"Yeah, no problem,"
he said.
"I'm good with directions, but it takes me longer to remember names."
"It's only your second day here. You're meeting so many new people that it's understandable if you can't remember everyone's names," I assured him. His friendly smile made it impossible for me not to smile back at him. My plan to keep my distance from him wasn't working. I'd wanted to be careful until I was sure that he wasn't dangerous, but here I was, socializing with him again.
"Hey, Clarissa."
Damien suddenly came up beside me and grabbed a hold of my arm. I was startled enough to stop walking and stare at him. It had been a while since I'd looked at him up close in the light, and I was struck by how gorgeous he was. His captivating green eyes were fixed so intently on me that I completely forgot about Bryce until he asked if I was okay. I glanced over at him to see a concerned expression on his face. Yeah, this is Damien." I turned my head back in his direction and introduced Bryce to him. Damien barely looked at him before returning his attention to me.
"Yeah, hi,"
he said, without a hint of interest in Bryce. "Bryce is new here," I told him, trying to get a reaction out of him that would confirm my suspicions about Bryce.
"Are you in our class?"
Bryce asked. "No," I answered for Damien. "What are you doing here anyway?" I questioned him. His eyes were so intense and so completely focused on me.
"I needed to see you." "Do you need help, Clarissa?"
The concern in Bryce's voice made me realize that Damien still had a possessive hold on my arm. "I'm okay," I said, and smiled to reassure him. "I'll see you in class."
"Okay. It was nice to meet you, Damien."
Bryce walked away uncertainly after Damien failed to reply. "That was rude," I chided him. "Bryce doesn't have any friends here, and you could at least have been nice to him."
"I don't care about him,"
Damien stated.
"I just wanted to see you."
"Because it's been such a long time since you've seen me," I noted dryly, but I was remarkably unconcerned by his stalking.
"I can't see you when you're sleeping,"
he said.
"I'm not there with you in your room."
"Why don't you just move in with me?" I joked, still feeling indulgent of his behavior.
"Your parents wouldn't let me,"
he replied. I couldn't tell if he was being serious, because he didn't crack a smile. The warning bell rang, but he didn't react to it. "You can let go of me now," I told him. He looked down at his hand on my arm, like he hadn't realized that he was still holding on to me, but then he pulled me closer to him. The unusual rings around his irises were even more striking so close up, as he gazed into my eyes.
"I can smell you."
"Not this again. Go find Kristen. I'm sure she'll be happy to—" He leaned down closer to my face with his vivid green eyes burning into mine.
"See you."
He moved his free hand up by my cheek and lightly caught my earlobe between his thumb and index finger.
"Hear you."
I stood there watching him in fascination, even though I had already guessed where he was going with this. It was obvious, and not at all clever enough to seduce me, but the way he was saying it was why I found him so enticing. He seemed to be completely into it. I could detect no hint of smugness or conceit, as his eyes blazed with an intensity I'd never experienced during my summer romances. His grip on my arm loosened, and his hand moved over it in a caress.
"Touch you."
Anticipation had now obliterated my reason and resistance as I waited for his final move.
"There's only one thing left,"
he murmured, with his lips close to mine. I gasped and pushed him away as I spun around to locate the source of my fear. The hallway was empty of students as the bell rang, but I wasn't concerned with being late.
"What's wrong?"
Damien asked in alarm when he saw my expression. "I don't know," I admitted. "I just had this bad feeling." He looked even more worried now.
"Like at the carnival?"
"Kind of. I'm not sure." The feeling had slipped away from me just as quickly as it had come. "Maybe I'm being paranoid."
"Maybe you have a reason to be paranoid," he mused. "You asked me why I'm watching you. It's because I feel like I need to keep you safe."
"From the wolf?" I questioned softly. His stance changed as he scanned the hallway with a predatory stare. The tension in his body made him appear as if he was ready for an attack.
"Do you think it's after you?"
"Do you expect it to be at school?" I countered, in a tone that failed to convey amusement.
"I am,"
he said. My gaze locked with his again, but this time it was in shock. It was one thing to hear Taylor theorize about the possibility of Damien being a werewolf, but it was another to have him acknowledge it as fact.
"I heard you talking about me with Taylor," he explained. "You were up in your room with the window closed, but I heard you all the way down in your backyard. I could have been imagining it, of course. So tell me if I'm right. Taylor thinks I have the hearing of a wolf."
I didn't want to deal with this and be pulled into the crazy with him. "I'm really late," I exclaimed, and dashed toward my classroom without looking back. The teacher warned me sternly that I would get a detention the next time I was late to class. Bryce gave me a questioning look, and I smiled to reassure him that I was okay. He couldn't have been watching me and Damien if he was in class. But then it occurred to me that he could hear us if he was a wolf. I couldn't fathom why he would care about what was happening between me and Damien, though. What was happening between me and Damien? He had almost kissed me in the hallway, but I didn't know why he was so interested in me now when he never had been before. Even if he really was becoming a werewolf, what did that have to do with me? I hadn't even been there when the wolf bit him. The only part I'd played in the whole thing was when I predicted that Blair was in danger, and I still didn't even know how I had done that. Bryce spoke to me after class.
"I don't mean to get in your business, but if that guy is hassling you—"
"He's not," I assured him immediately, without waiting for him to finish his sentence. "We're, friends." I hurried to change the subject. "So did Kristen give you your hoodie back?" The warmth faded from his eyes when I mentioned her name, but he answered pleasantly enough.
"Yeah, it's in my locker."
I wondered why he disliked her already when he didn't even know her. "That was nice of you to lend it to her."
"She was drawing negative attention to herself, and I wanted to stop it from escalating. Hopefully, she'll realize that she can't ignore the rules. Even in the wild, there's a natural order to things."
His beautiful blue eyes shone with earnest conviction. It sounded reasonable and normal until he added that last part about the wild, which made me suspicious of him again. There was something strange about him. "Are you going to study animals like your mom?"
"Yes,"
he answered enthusiastically.
"It's what I've always wanted to do. I love being out in nature, and the job sometimes lets you be out there for weeks at a time. My mom's out in the field right now."
"Where at?" I asked, thinking that he was talking about an actual local field.
"Wyoming. I probably won't see her until Christmas break."
Oh. Now I understood that out in the field meant out on a job. "So you're here with your dad?"
"My dad was killed in a motorcycle accident 2 years ago, but they were divorced for years before that. I'm actually here on my own," he said.
I regarded him in confusion. "But how can you live by yourself?"
"I'm 18, he explained. "I'm legally an adult, so I'm free to go where I want. Normally I'd love to be near Yellowstone, but this wolf attack was too unusual to ignore."
"Wait, You moved here because of the wolf attack? I had to make sure that I was understanding him correctly. Yes. A case like this is very rare, so I had to see it for myself. So much for him being my number one suspect, I thought. See what? Nobody has seen the animal since the night of the attack, and the police think it's a dog anyway. It's not a dog, he muttered. I mean, the victim said it was a wolf. That's Damien, I exclaimed. The guy you met before class. He was the one who was attacked. You can ask him about it if you want. Yeah, I will, he said. I thought that the situation with Bryce was just as weird as the events that had transpired with Damien. Who moved to a new town just because of a wolf attack? I wondered where he was living and how he was supporting himself. Was his mom sending him money? And if he wasn't the wolf that attacked Damien, then who was? Taylor added to my worries later that afternoon by informing me that she had asked Bryce out, and he had accepted. They were going on a date Friday evening. I then told her everything that I knew about him, even mentioning my earlier suspicions that he was the wolf that killed Blair. You got the idea from his wolf tattoo, she decided. But he wasn't even living here when they were attacked, so it couldn't be him. Don't you think it's bizarre that he moved here because of that? I pressed. Well, obviously he's obsessed with wolves if he has a wolf tattoo, she declared blithely. It's kind of a strange hobby, but people get obsessed with all kinds of nerdy things. He's still hot, though. When I got off the phone with Taylor, I saw that I had a Facebook message from Daphne Cross. She was one of the friend requests I had accepted in the past, but she was an acquaintance rather than an actual friend. I had heard that she had been absent from school lately because she was sick, but I was surprised when I read her message and found out that she was in the hospital. She was asking me to come visit her there as soon as I could. I sent her a message asking if I could go now, and she replied that she was looking forward to seeing me. Daphne was in my economics class, so maybe she wanted me to get homework for her. Yet I couldn't fathom why she wouldn't have just written that in her message. I felt awkward going to the hospital to visit someone I didn't know very well, especially since I didn't even know which illness had sent her there. Maybe she had the flu, I thought, and worried that I might catch it from her. I was therefore surprised to see that she didn't look sick at all when I entered her hospital room. Her hazel eyes were clear and alert, and she smiled at me. Hi, Clarissa. Thanks for coming. Hi, Daphne, I replied. How are you? I've been better, but I'll probably be worse before it's over. Have a seat, she urged. I need to talk to you. I sat down in a chair beside her bed. Why are you saying you'll be worse? Aren't they supposed to make you feel better? They're trying. I'm volunteering to test out a brand new drug, so maybe it'll work. Anyway, there's something you need to know. When we were at the carnival— What kind of drug? I cut in with a growing sense of unease. A cancer drug. I have an inoperable brain tumor, she explained. So, at the carnival— Oh my God, I exclaimed. I didn't know. I asked my friends not to tell anyone until we see if the drug works, so please don't say anything at school. Anyway, that's not why I wanted to talk to you. I did something, and I hope you'll understand. At this point, I couldn't imagine criticizing her for anything. What did you do? My family has the sight, she told me. It's what my grandmother calls it, and she says it's been passed down for generations. Most people that have it are born with it, like I was. I've always been able to sense things, and sometimes I know things before they happen. Have you ever experienced anything like that? I stared at her and realized that she had been talking about the carnival before I interrupted her. Only at the carnival, I said. You were there, I remembered. You came into my tent. You told me that I would meet my husband in college. She smiled softly. And that I would have 2 kids. That was before I'd transferred the site to you. You what? I asked in bewilderment. Do you remember the jolt you felt? Daphne asked. Her mentioning it brought back the memory. It had felt like static shock, But it was odd because it didn't happen in the usual way at first touch. Daphne had insisted that we link hands so I could read her better, and the electric charge hadn't happened until almost the end of my fake reading. Your prediction was wrong, Clarissa. I'm not going to have any children. I'm an only child myself, so there's no one after me. That's why I decided to leave my legacy to you. I could barely speak after her confession. You did this to me? I asked, in slightly more than a whisper. It was the perfect opportunity, the night of the full moon. Spells work at full power during this phase in the cycle, and they're binding. I knew you would be working the fortune-telling booth, and that it was my best chance. She knew that because her mom was in charge of the carnival. I had actually been surprised that Daphne wasn't working a booth, but now I knew why she hadn't. I told Blair that she was going to die, I informed Daphne with an accusing look. You tried to help her, she consoled me. It's not your fault that she died. I upset her, I exclaimed. And it didn't make a difference anyway. She could have at least been happy on her last night. You would never forgive yourself if you hadn't told her, she assured me. You would be thinking that you could have saved her. You didn't even ask me, I railed. You just put this on me without saying anything. You wouldn't have believed me, she said. And I didn't have time to argue about it. I had to take advantage of the full moon before I went into the hospital. It's waxing now, but I'll still be in here when it's full. So you're a witch? I asked. Did that make me a witch too? Such a thing would have been ludicrous to me before I started taking seriously the possibility that werewolves might exist. No, I've never tried to do a spell before, and I didn't even know if it would work. My grandmother warned me against it, because it could kill me if it went wrong. Under the circumstances, I was willing to take that chance, she explained wryly. What about me? I questioned. Was it dangerous for me too? Daphne hesitated before answering. It wouldn't harm you physically, but it could have possibly drawn negative energy toward you. I was very careful to guard against possession, though. I picked you because you're a stable, positive person. And my grandmother asked a friend of hers who's a Wiccan for protective charms. That's why I gave you the crystal necklace. Possession? You mean like The Exorcist? I jumped out of my chair. I don't care if you are dying. That is not okay. I stared at her with a mixture of outrage and horror. Then I got a sick feeling in my stomach as I remembered something. Oh my God. I heard voices. I mean, it was one voice, but I heard it. I thought it was Damien, but he says that he didn't say anything. I think it was me, Daphne said. Did it have anything to do with snowflakes? Yes, I exclaimed. That was it. But I was sure I heard his voice, not yours. That's because all your attention was on him, she explained. I was there in the hallway when you turned around to look at him, but you didn't notice me. You must have heard my thought and assumed it was his. Heard your thought? Now that was going too far and asking me to suspend disbelief. You can hear people's thoughts, too? No, I never have before. But I guess we're linked in some way now. I thought I wouldn't have the sight anymore once I gave it to you, but I've retained a bit of it, although it's not as strong as it was before. An amused smile played over her lips as she regarded me. So, what's the significance of snowflakes? That was an odd thing to be thinking about when it hasn't snowed yet. And why would you think that Damien said it to you? Do you know about Damien? I questioned tersely. Do you know what he is? Daphne's amusement had been replaced by a keen look of curiosity. What he is? I've been picking up on something different with him, but I thought that was because of the attack. Are you saying that it's something else? This entire conversation was way out there already, so I gave voice to my crazy suspicions about him. Well, he was attacked by a wolf during the full moon, so... I trailed off, but then plunged in. What does your grandmother say about werewolves? Her eyes widened, until they looked huge on her small, heart-shaped face. I was suddenly struck by how comical her expression looked, and I began to laugh. It must have been infectious, because Daphne was soon laughing with me. "The subject never came up," Daphne said with a final giggle. "But I'll ask her. I'll give you my number and you can call me and let me know what she says." Since her grandmother was the only person who seemed to know about these things, I hoped she would be able to give us some information on what was happening. "Do you really think that he's a werewolf?" Daphne asked. Her direct question was forcing me to think about it seriously. "I don't know, but he's acting weird." Daphne's expression had lost all traces of humor. "Be careful," she pleaded. "Maybe you should stay away from him until the full moon passes, just in case." "I will," I promised, but I wondered how much control I'd have over the situation.